Hey there, this is Kole. I'm here to tell you that this episode is brought to you by two separate things. So first off, I'm going to talk about Gary's book. It is called Souls of Darkness, and it is a parody of the old Worlds of Power books. It pretends that the Dark Souls, or a Dark Souls analog, was an NES game, and it has kind of this kind of comedic and heartwarming kind of story. It's fantastic. You can go to powerworlds.com for an amazing website, or you can go to Duckfeed.tv/store to buy a physical copy. Either of which, either the digital or the physical, really recommend you do that because it is great. The other thing I would recommend you do is go to duckfeed.tv/monster in my podcast. This is a new podcast that is only possible because of people who have donated to our Patreon at patreon.com/duckfeed.tv. It is a podcast where every week, 3 times a week, we talk about new monsters from the second edition Monstrous Manual. And then after we're done with that, in about 2 years or so, we're going to go on to different kind of stuff. It is all about how goofy and horrifying different monsters in the Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop kind of canon are. These monsters are horrifying and crazy, and we cannot talk enough about them. This is a bite-sized podcast 3 times a week about a new monster. That is duckfeed.tv/monster in my podcast. And let us not delay any further. We're super happy to have you here. Let us get to this episode.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
What is wrong, unkindled one? Are you not a Lord Seeker? Head to the base of the high wall and seek the Lords of Cinder. Is this not the calling of your kind since ages past?
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And I'm Jason Killingsworth.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a Kindled favorite.
Yes, and this week we are talking about the High Wall of Lothric. And as you heard, we are joined by Jason Killingsworth, our first guest of the season. Welcome, Jason.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hey.
Tell people where they might know you from.
So you may know me from such famous episodes of Bonfireside Chat as the Boletaria Palace episode. And then I was also on a Dark Souls 2 DLC episode of the show, both of which were incredibly fun. I work for Riot Games as a writer, and in my spare time at my kitchen table between 10 o'clock and 3 or 4 in the morning, I co-authored a book about Dark Souls called You Died.
Yeah,
so
a great book about Dark Souls, not just because we're in it.
Oh, thank you. And I mean, talking to you guys and talking to other people in the community felt as essential as talking about the design of the game itself, because, you know, as you know better probably than anybody, the social experience it's Miyazaki and everybody involved in the game wove that social element into the design of the game so purposefully, because it's such an essential foundational part of the whole experience. And whether just chatting about it, you know, outside of the game or actually kind of interacting with phantoms or their friendly spirits inside the game.
There's a really nice parody to having you on this episode. One, because this area kind of specifically recalls Boletaria Palace.
Absolutely.
Quite a bit. And then the other thing being, and I don't know if this is actually true, but when You Died came out, several people who listened to the show went back and listened to your appearance. And you had mentioned at that point creating a book about Dark Souls. And then it's kind of awesome to have been there, to have you be like, yeah, I'm doing that. And I don't know if that was the first publicized airing of that, if it was quite breaking, but very early on in that kind of cycle. And then to come back and actually have it out and have you back on the show, it's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know what the sort of print publishing like equivalent of vaporware would be, but you know, but yeah, it's I'm glad that it didn't end up going that way, that it actually was able to come to fruition. But actually, to even just give a sense of the timescale, because that was a few years ago now, which is pretty mad. I was living in the UK at that stage, and I'm back in Ireland now. But that book that I announced was actually a book that I was working on by myself with a different publisher called Press Select, run by some journalists, sort of academic friends of mine named Brendan Keogh and Dan Golding. And then a little ways into that project, I got contacted by Keza MacDonald, my co-author on You Died, and she had a project that she was working on and had a publisher lined up for, and asked me if I wanted to sort of join forces on and work together on a project. So I kind of went back and emailed those the guys I'd been working with, and Press Select was actually kind of going through a transition, and they were sort of, it was getting backburnered a little bit as they were sort of figuring out what they wanted to do with it, and so they gave me their blessing to jump on board with Keza's project. So there was actually a whole kind of metamorphosis, and even just how the process of putting the book together and kind of where it was going to be published. And so ever since that first chat, it's gone through its own journey, to being.
It went from being
because I was sorry she wasn't able to actually join us on this episode. She just had some things come up, but
yeah, it is. We originally were going to get both you guys on an episode, but it looks like we might have to split you guys up, which is a-okay with us, because we like you guys both.
Yeah,
and that'll be great. But yeah, I'm glad that you're able to join us now, and I love the book, and would recommend it. Even if we weren't involved, if we weren't in it, which is really flattering and very nice.
Yes.
And if you and I weren't buddies, I would still recommend it, because it's an awesome artifact, and kind of and games don't get this kind of thing. We have like the personal, like the boss fight books things where they're like personal reflections on a game, and they examine some of the context, but this is a real kind of snapshot of a community. So I love the part of it that it's like half about the game, and half about the game is a lot of stuff that I already know. But the actually having a document of, the far reaching fingers of this thing as a cultural phenomenon is really, really great. And I think is going to be kind of important going forward to have that crystallized.
Yes.
Yeah. Far reaching fingers was my favorite boss in Dark Souls. So it actually, it sounds like those Zelda, those little Zelda hands that would sort of fall off
the wall
masters,
creep out of the walls and try to.
They sound like an exercise equipment, like the wall master. They just grab you and put you down at the bottom of the stairs after you get to the top, so you have to keep climbing them.
That's what all exercise feels like.
Infinity stairs,
falling downstairs. Yeah.
My secret favorite feature of this book, all the community stuff is amazing, but there's a lore appendix at the back of this that has some of the most concise explanations of kind of the various movers and shakers in Dark Souls 1 and Lothric. And these are probably some of the most concise yet complete descriptions of kind of the ways that these interact that I've seen.
Oh wow. Yeah. We actually shunted that back into, it was originally they were going to be their own standalone chapters, and we just thought, like, of the sort of hardcore, Souls fans that we're writing this book for, we just felt pretty insecure about how interested people would be in kind of going back through and being reintroduced to these people that they already know, like, fairly well. So Keza had the idea to just label it as an appendix, so people feel like they've finished the book, and then that felt like kind of bonus DLC. Like if you wanted to have a stroll with with some of those your old buddies, then you could do that if you wanted, but then they could feel like they'd already finished the book.
Yeah, it's like it's like the little booklet you get at a high school reunion a little bit.
Well, it does kind of feel like a little bit of a reunion, like a Souls reunion, because you're catching up with these different creators and authors and and like video magicians and lore archaeologists, and that everybody's kind of in a room for not one last Dark Souls 1 kind of little reminisce, but definitely definitely just pulling all these disparate people into that scrapbook together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the lore part of the back reminds me of the similar thing that is in the Old Hunters guide.
Yeah.
Or if it's in the Old Hunters or the main Bloodborne guide, but
it's the Old Hunters.
The Old Hunters, there's just a nice, like, even if it is information that is already out there, it is really nice to have it in one place and kind of consolidated. Yeah. So kudos. Good work.
Thanks, man. There's been so much written about the game. In one sense, it feels like a book like this is completely extraneous, because there have been so many words, sort of just like this never-ending chocolate fountain of words that's been kind of burbling over, like, with people expressing their kind of fascination with the game. So in one sense, it feels like it's already gotten its sort of quota of words, but I don't know. But the way that the internet is, they're so diffuse, and it's in wikis and on different websites, and it just felt like the beauty of a book is that you can take all of these different strands and kind of create this, like, just a package where everything kind of sits really harmoniously together. And also, we just had a lot more to say about the game. I mean, Keza for IGN and Eurogamer and other places had written about the Soul series, and I'd written about it for Edge while I was the features editor there, and had just kept picking at that. I don't want to call Souls a scab, but just scratching that itch, but never quite satisfying it and fully. And so this was, I think, in the interview with you, you talked about how the podcast was a way of kind of having all this stuff kind of coursing through your system and needing to just sort of bleed it out a little bit, like the kind of leech on the skin to just sort of exercise that that demon, all the thoughts that you had.
Yeah, we're all unraveling the same sweater.
That's it. We're just like we're like a Weezer, we're like all the members of Weezer, like sort of pulling a string.
I call anybody except for Rivers Cuomo, like literally anybody, even the guy they kicked out. Like, just don't make me be that guy.
Can I be one of the characters from Happy Days? That's in universe,
please.
Right?
Yeah, I'll take it. Let me be the jukebox. I will not be. I don't need to be Rivers Cuomo. It feels nice to get that stuff down. It feels really nice to make a definitive kind of statement on a thing, even though there's still more to talk about. And it is an ongoing conversation, and that conversation is going to spill into the season as well. So it is. It just keeps going. It is a never-ending chocolate fountain, an infinity chocolate fountain. Like, you can just swim through this thing for.
It goes right up to the edge.
And I'm sure there are people listening who probably have. Some percentage of a Dark Souls book sitting in the top drawer of their desk, and I don't want anybody to feel like this is some definitive document that nullifies or cancels out anybody else's sort of long form writing about the game that they're plotting or scheming to get out into the world. So finish those books. This is obviously two people's love letter to the game, but I want to read I want to read other people's unique impressions, and everybody's
use more love letters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. There's so much cynical bullshit floating around, especially on the internet. So much smarm and rantiness, and so I encourage other people to express appreciation, even sort of candid, like, critical appreciation. The world needs more of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Kole, what did we do last time on the show?
Well, Gary, last time we had our kind of basics and tutorial and hub world episode where we rose from the grave and defeated Udex Gunder.
Do you mean Udex Grunder?
I mean, no, he's a different guy. He's his cousin, works down at the tire yard.
Yep. Yeah, I am poking fun at the fact that we said Grunder a couple times, and heard about it an order of magnitude more times than we actually made the mistake. So that's going to come up a couple times in this episode, but it's amazing,
you heard like
the
a
way
rattling
that
at the window pane as you were recording the episode. Like,
the floor opened up beneath me.
There's a real butterfly effect kind of thing where if you you make one mistake and then it just multiplies and multiplies them. It's like when Bart lined up all of the megaphones.
Gunder.
And then he's like Grunder into one end of the megaphone, and then it just exploded. And
I did hear rumors. It's been the number of usages of the incorrect name have been multiplying. Like I heard just yesterday, I heard somebody saying there were 12, misuses of the phrase. It keeps growing every day.
It's like the Velvet Underground.
Yeah, everybody who heard the misuse. Not everybody heard the misuse, but everyone who did started a band.
Yes,
everybody wrote a document full of typographical errors, sort of in Google Docs.
Yep. Nope. I just I wrote the wrong name down because I'm not as familiar with Norse naming as a lot of people, and Grunder seemed just as valid as Grunder.
Yeah, that doesn't even have to be it, Kole. It doesn't have to be like you just made a typo.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't even have to be like a personal failing as to. And I'm not really calling people out for the corrections necessarily. Mm-hmm. It is just funny the way that you can misspeak once or twice and then just have it like,
build
now I know there's a silver cat ring. So just so everyone knows, now I know that that's in the game.
Yep.
At the time we recorded, I didn't think it was in there because it was hidden behind a really obscure quest line.
Mm-hmm.
But now I know it's there.
Yep.
And so thank you. I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's just funny the way that you like whenever that happens, it is just literally dozens and dozens.
I heard that the main thing that makes reality television so compelling is that it's designed so that you see people on your television screen that you're able to feel superior to, because they're very fallible kind of individuals, such as the Republican president-elect, and you're able to laugh at them and feel kind of smugly slightly above their level. And so by inserting a tactical misspeaking into an episode of Bonfireside Chat just gives like a slight hint of that kind of flavor for people listening. They can feel good about the fact that
we're Honey Boo Boo's twin moms of podcasting.
Yeah, no, just saying Grunder and then going on a 30-minute Grundle tangent. Yep. 30 minutes. That is our form of Wabai Sabai.
Yeah, it's our brand.
Yep.
Anywho, before I interrupted you,
yes.
so and if we mess something up, we do want to hear about it.
Oh yeah,
I said, it's just funny.
Yep.
Maybe not the Grunder stuff. I also Irithil. I know that now.
Yeah.
But I was just mispronouncing it. It's okay. It's a lot of nonsense letters put in a row. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Guys,
you shouldn't be angry at somebody who mispronounces a word because they probably learned it by reading.
Yeah, well, and it's not only that, but also these are nonsense words that were just made up. It's fantasy.
Irithel would be like the most difficult Wheel of Fortune puzzle ever. It's like, okay, I want an E, I want RTSLNE.
Yeah, one. Yeah. Yep. We got one. Go.
Oh gosh, so we defeated Udix Gunder.
Yes.
Earning entry into the familiar yet not too familiar confines of Firelink Shrine, where we met our firekeeper and some old friends before building our central bonfire from scratch out of a sword, which will serve as our link to the outside world.
Yes. And so we're heading to the once you use that bonfire, we go to High Wall of Lothric. The High Wall of Lothric surrounds the main city and the castle of the Kingdom of Lothric. And this is the place where all of the kingdoms of the Lords of Cinder are converging. It is not, some of that language is really useful and intentional because they say converging, it is a process. Mm-hmm. This wall actually also appeared. It is not something that has always been here. So things, plate tectonics, like things are literally, like when we talked about Dark Souls 2 being spacey-wacy, right off the bat, we're knowing that Dark Souls 3 is spacier and wacier. Like the ground is literally shifting. This wall is just a heavy fortification. It's filled with hollow warriors and Lothric knights, some of whom are touched by the abyss, which we'll find similar to our Udux friend. Mm-hmm. Additionally, we see evidence of a massive battle between these Lothric knights and the heretic.
There you go. Heretic. Yeah. Heretides. Yes.
Harry Titties.
What? Oh,
It's that kind of podcast, Jason. Welcome to the
I
Harry
take it at
Titties
drive time, boys.
with J-Dog and Coltrane. It's the gas with J-Dog and Coltrane with Harry Titties wing nights on their way to the castle.
Yeah.
So,
oh gosh, yeah. So this massive battle as we go there, and so there are a lot of comparisons to draw here between 1-1 and in fact all of the Boletaria Palace levels between those and what we see of Lothric here. So if 1-1 and Demon Souls was this hollow army that was stalwartly defending their castle, and that was kind of the theme of it. And that wasn't really an army at their height, but still, kind of had their shit together. The High Wall of Lothric is kind of this scraps of a defending force, making this kind of haphazard and disorganized last stand, almost.
Sure. Yeah, and that quoting of 1-1 is going to continue. So, like, anytime we see Lothric in this game, it is specifically Boletaria based, like as kind of a nice little echo. I'm not saying like in the lore this actually is Boletaria. I'm just saying that there are a lot of little individual scenarios and bits of geography and stuff that are explicitly meant to recall the World 1 of Demon Souls, which is great because it's one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm way into that.
And even the kind of geographic structure of this is similar to 1-2, because we are kind of proceeding on different levels of this same wall until we can find a way kind of down to ground.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The way we get here is really interesting because we don't warp to a bonfire here, which is tugging at the corners of my mind of understanding where Firelink exists in space. And we'll talk about that a lot later in the season. But when we talk about convergy-wergy, spacey waciness, like that's possibly this is significant. We warp into this little shrine room that has this Lord vessel and another coiled sword in it. So we don't walk here. We don't teleport between bonfires. We teleport to this room.
Yes. And then we kind of like open up this door from this warp room that has a grate on the floor, I assume, in case any sewage falls onto a bonfire. But we open this door and we step out to an amazing view, looking kind of straight up at Lothric Castle with its 2-level bridge that really reminds me, like, this is Bloodborne as fuck. And you can kind of look backward and see kind of these mountains, a similar kind of mountainscape that we saw, from the cemetery and the shrine. But there's kind of this large area that is kind of shrouded in this dark mist.
Yes.
I love that they do the behind door number 2 kind of reveal, because when you like appear at a bonfire in an area where it's already presented, just the simple act of tucking it behind a door that's going to creak open and reveal that in a slow, kind of tease of a reveal. It just it makes the experience of like sort of unwrapping a gift, like rather than just having the presents that are laid out on a table when you show up to the party. Like, so I loved that experience of coming through the door and then letting my eyes adjust, like coming out of the vault in like Fallout 3, something like that.
When you warp to the small room, it could be anywhere. There could be anything on the other side of that door. And when you step out, to know kind of specifically that you're in one of the highest points of the world, it put me a little bit off my balance the first time that I played.
This game loves Souls games love opening a door slowly. I don't think another game in the series uses it as well as this one does. It happens a lot, and it happens so often that like speedrunners of this game, they quit out of the game during the door opening animation to restart the game and have the door open. So like it happens a lot. It is a time-saving strat to not watch these animations, but I like drink them in like every single time it happens. Because I know they're showing me something afterwards. Like that is a framed picture that the game wants me to see. And I really love the way this is handled, not least of which because those possible considerations to kind of the cosmology that we'll kind of talk about later. The fact that it may be significant the times that you don't teleport to a bonfire in this game. But it is a beautiful, beautiful scene. The sky is just this like ridiculous, like sickly, angry kind of orange thing. It reminds me of tornado weather from my home state. Like you'd come out sometimes and be like, oh, like I look like I walked into hell. Like we're gonna get a tornado.
Yeah, it's the it's the heavy cloud cover with with the midday sun reflecting back up into the atmosphere onto the clouds. Yeah. And under that sky, we step down to kind of this platform on top of this tower alongside the wall and get ourselves kind of situated at this bonfire, which is surrounded by two things that are going to be not just fairly ubiquitous in this area, but ubiquitous throughout kind of the first half of the game. The first of which are these kind of large, empty, kind of plain chairs. And these bodies that at first appear to be kind of skewered on the trees or kind of crucified on them. But instead, upon closer inspection, it kind of looks like the trees are growing up through them in a real deadly premonition kind of way. And all these
they're kind of combined. I think they are turning into trees. I think that this is a person taking root here. Like if you look closely at the seams, like there's not puncture marks of them, and their legs kind of seamlessly move into the base of these things.
Yeah. Either way, it's a horrifying merging and transition.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I thought of was the Painted World, actually, like where you have the bodies on spikes. But then all of a sudden, I felt like there was this element of, like, Dark Souls 2's obsession with kind of trees and roots, and even the kind of giant, these giant trees like that you end up sort of time traveling with kind of later in the piece, and
the giant corpses that turn into the Watcher trees that we saw at Firelink.
Exactly. So the idea of kind of humanoid trees, and there's a nice little history and.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like turning into a plant as a source of corruption is a Souls thing, and as just kind of a theme. So we have the giants. We also have Aldea, who's very tree-like, and this entire area, as we get further down, and then later areas in the game, are going to have this overgrown root structure growing over everything.
Yeah.
I don't know what this means yet.
I associate it with Izalith and Chaos, and kind of with what Aldea did to kind of merge Chaos forces and Abyssal forces.
But I'm not totally sure what you mean by Aldea merging those two. But I don't think it's Chaos in this game. And the reason being with what we find out about Chaos later in this game. But so I don't actually know. I don't know what it is. I don't think it's that, but we can. I don't want to get too far into spoiler territory. When we get to the point in which, I think that why I think it's not that, we'll talk about it then. And in the meantime, myself or someone else could figure out exactly what's going on.
All right.
With these guys. But I don't think of it as that.
At the very moment, though, it feels reminiscent of that idea of overgrowth.
Oh, sure. Like when I was first here, that was what I thought too. So like if I put myself in my first run through without I thought that as well. I was thinking either Aldea stuff, or the Chaos, and like it is, regardless of which, is terrifying. Like it looks really, really creepy. Like before this, I just watched the first season of True Detective and finished that up, which has a lot of like people being kind of intertwined with trees as well in a terrifying way.
Oh yeah.
And yeah. So super, super creepy. And the chairs are going to be important too. More a little bit later than we were at here. But we have our bonfire, and then we can take a right path or a left path, and we'll take the right path first because it dead ends pretty quickly.
Yes, dead ends very quickly into kind of this kind of combat platform where we're introduced to some of the basic enemies of this area. These hollow warriors, which are the first ones we've seen, dogs, which are kind of a returning thing, and then these kind of interesting guys, these hollow worshippers who are non-aggressive.
Until, some of them will become aggressive because there's also these guys. I don't think one comes over here.
No, it's over on the left path. I make a note of that.
Yeah, but these guys can be kind of traps. There's also a big hollow warrior as well who shows up here. So there are the regular ones, and there's a gigantic Axeman.
Yeah, and these are going to very quickly be far more aggressive than anything you've seen so far outside of Udix Gundar.
Yeah, these little mini Gundars.
Yeah. Until the explicit mini Gundar that we see at the far end.
Yes.
So when we get this pus of man up on this other kind of tower platform, this was a huge surprise to me. And it made me think that it was going to happen far more often. And I wasn't sure how I felt about that.
Oh, me too. Because I think these things are hard to fight. And I think they remain hard to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so they're incredibly aggressive, and they're just enormous. Like it's very hard to, like, the standard evasive maneuvers that you can perform to get out of the way of attacks. Like it just feels like his big gelatinous kind of body is just everywhere you're trying to be to get away from him. You know, it's there.
They're very oddly shaped as well. So to describe what we're talking about, you'll remember how Iudex Gundyr kind of exploded with this. I called it like a Tyrannosaurus Rex made out of like abyssal poop. And the same thing happens here. So like twice in this area, and we're going to talk about the other one later, just kind of some of these hollow peasant worshiper kind of people. When you kill them or when you do damage to them, they will explode like a Resident Evil 4 Las Plagas and kind of turn into a mini boss and attack you. And, you know, it's a very similar fight to Iudex Gundyr. Has the same kind of arm, has the same weird shape, and kind of the same both like level of hit points and also like a weakness to fire as well.
I was really demoralized when I had the same thought you had, that these were going to keep showing up, because I have the same problem with these that I have with Grundlepus, where like the hurt box is hard to make out.
Yeah.
Like I don't know which part of these things is going to hurt me, you know, and it's hard when you're up close, your screen is just kind of filled with venom slime, and it's hard to know when an attack is being telegraphed and the like. So my strategy for this whole area just became to through trial and error, find out which one of these guys were going to transform, because there's only a couple of them, and then just make sure I kill them before they transform.
Yeah.
This one is set up specifically to punish that, though, because he's next to a crossbowman. So you're meant to not rush in. You're meant to approach the crossbowman, you know, cautiously, and then have this guy explode into a pus of man, which is rough.
I was talking to a colleague today who was talking about his first experience with Dark Souls, and he was just saying he felt like the game was so boring when he first played it, because there was this you know, shield raised, and we're kind of doing the Mexican standoff kind of circle, and it was so methodical, like hyper methodical in a way, and you see some of that in this stage where, you know, you have the very standard kind of Souls face-offs, where you're sort of picking your window, but this enemy type, like, was just such a wonderful counterpoint to that, because it was so completely unpredictable and erratic, and so it kind of blows up that template and gives this very colorful, you know, counterpoint to that, which I really liked.
Yeah. I mean, surprise is delightful in these games, even if it does end up, you know, punishing you, like, you know, to be caught off guard and to come back to it with that new knowledge.
I came to peace with these things when I started treating them like an encounter to be considered, as opposed to something that could just happen constantly.
Yeah.
You know,
I was like, this won't even fit in most of the hallways that I know are going to be in this kind of game.
Yeah. How do these guys get around? How did you go to work? But luckily it's actually used intentionally.
It
like,
climbs into a friend's Camaro and just like instantly transforms. Well, like an airbag going off by accident or something. Like.
I mean, they retract into their sheath, you know?
Yeah. It's like are you saying it's like a horse's dinger?
Yep.
Like, but as an enemy?
Yeah. Like when you nail a shot in horseshoes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just like that.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm in my sheath. Like the sheath was made for me. So your reward is, if you fight him, you get an ember. And also the longbow is over here.
Yes. You can pick that up without fighting this guy. So you can make a suicide run from fairly early on to get access to you know, range weaponry if you have the dex for it. That's a pretty high requirement. Also, if you defeat this guy, it's access to a very early Titanite shard. Which, you know, Andre can use those right away. You don't have to find a blacksmith. One's right there in your home. So that can give you an early edge as well.
And to be so Titanite shards, the regular ones are around, like we found one of those in the opening tutorial area as well, on top of that coffin. So they're not that hard to find. So getting them is still useful, because they've also upped the requirements. It's really weird. I feel like you get twice as many Titanite shards, but it takes twice as many to upgrade.
Yeah.
Now it feels like a net wash.
Yeah.
It's really strange. So you do want to collect as many as you can, because even finding one doesn't mean you can upgrade anything yet. You need to find 2 to upgrade to a +1.
Yeah.
If you go down from here, it's a dead end. This is a one-way shortcut that you're going to come to later. So it is, eventually this is going to be our boss run.
Yeah.
But for now, we head off to the left path.
Yes, to a path that overlooks just a straight up dead wyvern. Wyvern? Wyvern.
Yeah, I love this because did you guys think this was going to come to life and breathe fire on you?
Oh God, absolutely.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. It's so good. It's like it is so dread inducing.
I think I did like a running sort of R2 leap strike onto the head, and like felt like I just like bitch slapped a bookcase or something. Like it just was a very unsatisfactory kind of plunk.
If this is going to happen, it's going to happen on my terms.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and it's a good time for it too because you have like nothing to lose.
Mhm.
You know, it's right there. Here's where we start seeing the worshiping hollows with more context as well, because here they are worshiping those trees. They're worshiping the hollows that are turning into trees, and then we're going to see up at this dragon. This is getting ahead of us a little bit, but they're explicitly worshiping this dead dragon. Some of them down here are doing it, but upstairs they actually have chairs set up to just sit and watch the dragon rot. Like
Yeah, it's our duck window. Yeah.
Yeah, it's what they do instead of watching Cutthroat Kitchen, is they just sit there and watch this dragon turn to ash slowly.
Gosh, that Alden Brown, he angers up the blood.
Yeah,
Just let them cook.
He's such a low-key figure. I was watching, this is a digression, I was watching, like, that show is kind of, you know, Houseboy Fever has struck, or that show that the houseboys have.
Well, they added new episodes to Netflix.
We've been watching it, and there was one where like there was something clearly wrong with Alton Brown. Somebody like lost an auction in the end, and he's like hovering over them, just being, you know, his little impish, like Loki like figure, and he goes, "I want to make you feel bad for being cheap. You could have won this." And he says it just, he's like squeezing the words out, and it makes no sense. Like, you are having a weird day, Alton Brown.
Yeah, he was waiting for some test results.
I want to make you feel cheap. Like it sounds like a fucking Frank Booth. Like,
yeah, it's a great show.
It is actually an elegantly designed game.
Oh yeah,
while also being my favorite trash TV.
Oh yeah,
right now it's really good.
Anyway, but yeah, they're sitting there watching these dragons, but they can be awakened. They can kind of be activated by
not
these
the dragons.
The
hollows.
No, the hollows. Thank you for correcting my nouns there. The hollows can be activated by these kind of lantern bell bearers, right?
Yeah, these alarm clock guys.
Yeah,
just come through and play some of the relaxing music from Eco and get everyone to wake up and attack. And so you want these guys are high priority target once you know who they are. If you can kill them, then the other hollows just won't wake up, and they are just non-aggressive. You can just stab them in the back or let them worship as they see fit, because it's fucking America. You know, or you can stab them in the back because it's fucking America. Either or.
But what's kind of great is, you know, they'll come up. It feels like it's kind of triggered to approach the platform when you're halfway through it, especially after like knowing that I'm just going to disregard these guys because they're non-aggressive, and then when they activate everybody, they kind of converge on you, like you're surrounded, like right away. They kind of create ambushes out of things that are hiding in plain sight, both visually and mechanically.
Yeah, I was surprised cool. at the number of those idle, you know, targets, I suppose, because it's so unsatisfying to like, you know, hack down just this idle, you know, piece of unthreatening, you know, meat. Like, you know, it felt like, I don't know, working on the killing floor, like the idea of like killing the cows that sort of march through. You're not like, you know, some feted warrior, you know, like you're just kind of zapping like very mindlessly, and so it felt like a surprising design choice, to be honest. I felt like, wow, this is actually adding like tedium into this progression through the stage, because, you know, there's no real mindfulness to how you approach. I mean, aside from like actually wanting to, you know, remove that activating, you know, bell ringer, but in many other places there isn't a bell ringer. There's just guys, you know, hanging out.
It's
you know.
It's pretty unsatisfying to kill them. You're right. Like it feels like the first third of the stage is made up of, you know, like, okay, remember when you killed that hollow banging his head against the wall for fun?
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't really a challenge to it, but, you know, there he is, you're going to do it. It feels like that. And I kind of felt bad about it, because it was kind of like the opening scene of The Gunslinger, where that priest like makes all the townspeople go crazy and attack Roland. Like, there's no joy in this. Like, none of them did anything to deserve it, aside from being like agitated to attack.
But because you get souls from it, there's this kind of brain, like,
it's such a paltry amount, though. It's not even worth the risk. It's like bending down to pick up a penny.
Yeah, it is exactly like bending down to pick up. Yeah, that's a good metaphor. Yeah, it is weird. I think that they act as an environmental chaff more than anything. Like, if they're not here for an ambush, it is just meant to show a sense of population, and is tied into how I feel like games of this generation need to fill up every available space. So it's like, it's just that there are tons of people, tons of these hollows here, and they're all worshiping. It would be kind of undercut the reverence and the fact that this is actually a thing. Like, this is an element of this world, is that they do this worshiping if there were fewer of them. At the same time, my desire to kill non-aggressive enemies in this game overrides the fact that, so I just can't just live and live them, because they teach me not to with those alarm clock boys. So it is kind of contradictory ideas. Like, if there were just tons of non-aggressive hollows here, I think that can really work. And it makes me think back to Latria.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. And I think that's really cool. But the fact that they can just become aggressive for no particular reason, or not for no particular reason, but for no particular prediction, you don't know when the alarm clocks are going to come out, does make me second guess myself and literally just murder everyone. Yeah. Luckily, for most weapons, they'll go down in one hit for most starting classes. So it just becomes literally reaping. And and it's not really satisfying, but at least it goes by quick. But I agree with you, Jason. It is kind of weird.
But it does inject that, like, my my sort of preoccupation with the kind of the weirdness and my fascination with religion and souls has such a cool sort of strange expression of religion, which Miyazaki talked to us a little bit about for the book. Having all of this sort of congregation of supplicants does add a strange, unsettling ceremony to a scene that would otherwise just be knights patrolling, the high wall, which would be very straightforward. But all of a sudden now it's got this weird mystical element to it that it's nice set dressing.
The fact that they're apparently civilians gives a strong signal that this is just kind of what life is now. And kind of indicates we're pretty far down the line of entropy.
Sure. The so going when you get to the end of this hallway, if you go up to the top, as we mentioned, there are those chairs with the dragon. This is where you're going to get your binoculars. There's another alarm clock warrior, and this is where you get a close look at the dragon, and you see that it is actually slawing off into ash. So it's literally petrified or burnt to a crisp, or somehow turning into ash in a mystical Dark Souls 3 way that ash is used. But it is ashes coming off of this dragon.
Yeah, it's like off-gassing.
Yes, which is interesting. There is a way to kind of go to the bottom through this little shortcut secret to get an item, which I think is another Titanite shard.
Something like that.
Do you think that, like, Ash Lake is presumably the ashes of the everlasting dragons, and I wonder if this is a moment where you're actually seeing that degradation process, that ended up becoming a beach, sort of a strand, in Dark Souls 1. It's like a side really, curiosity. I wonder.
It's a super cool idea that that could be the case, but also there is a explicitly spoilery thing that I don't want to talk about that makes me think that is maybe not the case.
Yeah. I believe so. My personal pet feeling is that Ash Lake is called Ash Lake because of ash trees, specifically Yggdrasil, the world tree in Norse mythology, being an ash tree, and those trees rising up from the very bed of that lake. To presumably these other worlds resembling ash trees.
I always thought the beach in Ash Lake was dragon as well. Like I think that's true. It could be both, but I always thought that was ash that you were walking around, not on sand. But for this game specifically, I think that there might be something different going on with these dragons. Oh,
these are explicitly wyverns too.
Yeah. But regardless of what these things are, once you get under them, there's this little mess hall area. down below where there are some more hollows, and this is real classic. Like somebody, I mean, I know we just wrote, you just wrote a book on Dark Souls, but like you could literally do like a scene by scene analysis of all the opening areas of Dark Souls games and the way that they can, because they're so good. Yeah. Like, and this introducing, so we have like classic things we've seen before, where it's like, it's kind of dark. There's a guy hiding behind some boxes. There's a guy sitting on the floor, but just the kind of the way that they introduce these elements time and time again in a really kind of natural, organic fashion. And each game puts like a new kind of twist on them as well. Like it's really, really great.
Yeah.
Like Souls have the best first levels, like in games, like they're so good.
Yeah.
So there's not very much to this. There's just two guys, but they're introducing that like, hey, there's going to be guys hiding behind shit. And there's going to be guys who blend in the scenery, and they just do it really, really well in one little room.
And specifically, the guy who's kind of sitting there holding his head, cradling his head there, with his little hip plate there, he is kind of drawing your attention. And as you go and probably like mercy kill him or whatever, the guy from behind the bookshelf / barrels kind of like comes out and attacks.
Yeah. There's also a ladder here that has a little candle next to it. So it's signaling you that like, it's just doing a lot of communication here.
Yeah.
You can head down, you're in another little section of wall. And then you head over to a new area after this.
And this articulates differently depending on which way you decide to go. Right? Because if you decide to stay on the low ground, right, instead of going up to this kind of platform of hollows and bodies that you saw before, if you decide to take the lower path, you will fight some, just kind of very like heavily fortified spearmen and crossbowmen, right?
Yes.
And none the wiser, right? All the merrier.
And I love that it wasn't as straightforward a descent in this area, because outside while you were on the walls, you had these very clear, that it's a staircase that's going to take you up or down or whichever way. But all of a sudden you're in this almost like this cylindrical barrel that, there's whole sections of the floor missing. And all of a sudden you're trying to figure out where do I drop down? Where, what's the best way to proceed through this slightly, hard to read, kind of passage.
Yeah. And once you leave there, I don't really even know where I'm at in relation to where I was before. I can imagine it from overhead, like an articulation point, like an elbow, are these towers.
Yeah, this is like a big like quarter circle is what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I think that I'm not totally sure if this next part though, when you leave and you have this little ambush here, I think the thing happens, which we're not avoiding spoilers because we're gonna say it right away. A dragon shows up. I think it shows up if you take the low path as well.
Oh no, I totally took the low path, and the wyvern didn't like it
didn't show up at all.
Nope.
Huh. I thought it maybe was time based. Like maybe if you're there long enough,
maybe
it shows up.
Yeah. Like later, like once you activate the wyvern, it will be kind of just an ever present, 1-2, area of effect, kind of flame attack. But if you never go up, you never activate the wyvern, as far as I could tell.
Yeah,
this is over the course of 2 different characters too.
Yeah, I had no idea. I thought he always came out. Maybe I stepped on the stairs or did something to trigger him otherwise, because I definitely used him to murder this row of like a half dozen hollows.
Oh, it's a total pro strat, because like if you play Dark Souls 1, that, Dragonfire can kill these guys who might be giving you some trouble, because this is very much, it's your introduction to spearmen. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And there's 1,000 guys. This is very much, the Hellkite Drake crossed with the 1-2 or, actually like the later Boletaria dragons, like the ones you just have to run past their flaming thing, I think in 1-3 or 1-4. But again, I was just like, oh, this is Boletaria. Like, because a gigantic dragon comes through and lands, and there's a high road and a low road. The dragon is explicitly guarding the high road.
Yeah.
Here.
My pet theory is that that the design team sort of feels like these years later that they have all of the accumulated kind of design experience, and it's a way for them to actually go back and remake, that same template, but with all of this new information. They feel like I could do such a better, like 10 years from now, I'll feel like, I should write another book about Dark Souls, because I'm just a better writer now. I'll just, trash that, old one. Or I think you talked in our interview about sort of sometimes toying with the idea of going back because you're better at, putting together podcasts now. And so you could do one that's smoother and more professional and whatever. Yeah. So I feel like the returning to these themes is, I don't know, almost like the perfectionist designer wanting to have another go because they feel like they've mastered, some new thing that they can recreate it in a more beautiful, like perfect way.
Yeah.
Like that's my kind of read on it.
Yeah, with these specific encounter designs, sure. Yeah, like these actual just kind of revisiting new ideas, because like Dark Souls has never, for a fantasy game, has never done dragons particularly well. And there are a couple of like exceptions, but on the general, I think that most dragons kind of suck in Dark Souls. Like they're not very fun to fight, and they work best as this kind of environmental hazard thing. And this is a really good articulation of it, not least of which because it's not, if you get hit by the fire, it's not instant death. Like if you block, you won't die. And then even while the fire is on the ground, it's not instant death either. Like it just hurts.
Right.
So you can still get around here. It's best to go up first because it's going to loop down. And you can get some kind of stuff. If you just run straight up and run for the door, you can make it right away.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you wait for the dragon to calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
And run straight up and go through that door.
Mm-hmm.
There's good treasure on that bridge. That's where you're going to get a claymore.
Mm-hmm. You're also going to get a shitload of embers too.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. From so it's just kind of difficult to get, but you can spend a little bit of time like shuttle running and getting that stuff. But if you run up the thing and go into this room, there is another just real fucking kind of fuck you surprise going on here.
I love this so much.
Yeah.
I saw this and I couldn't stop laughing, and I haven't stopped laughing to this day. I'm editing all of it out.
It's actually a sickness. Kill me. Kill me.
End this hell. Jason, did you get trapped by the mimic here? Did you fall for it?
It was the first chest that I'd come to in the game, and it stunk. Like it smelled so fishy. Like it smelled like a San Francisco fish market. Like I don't know. I went up to it and just chunked it with my sword. Like within seconds. Like I knew that. I was 99% certain it was a mimic. Yeah.
This one, unlike every other mimic in this game, and spoilers, there are more mimics per capita in Lothric than any other Souls game. Like mimics are a really powerful voting block here. More floors, 4 more floors.
Would you say it's almost mimic the way that they've just proliferated so much.
So let's repeat the adage because it still holds true.
Oh, no, it's so weird how often I use that. Like I'm not kidding. Like it is the Bonfire Side Chat mimetic device of chain curves in, treasure within, chain curves out, better watch out. Is useful as hell in this game. Like it is.
Does it follow
really,
the exact
really
same
useful
pattern in this one? I didn't actually study it to be sure, but
so
that's great.
I didn't fall for it because of
it would be so Souls to switch it up, wouldn't it? To like just have it go the opposite way.
Yeah.
I would actually be mad.
Oh, that would be if it was just the somebody a long time ago on Twitter when Dark Souls 2 was coming out said that the biggest troll that From could ever do would to have your NPC that is your like Solaire level bro, have him wearing a spike like helmet like Lothric and have him introduced standing next to a cliff. So like players who know the series would just kick him off immediately, and then and have him actually be a good guy. But they they don't do that. This mimic, unlike every other mimic in the game, actually has a kind of a different color palette. Like he glows a little bit. Like this guy stands out. Yeah. Later mimics don't do this, but this one at least are a little bit kind of being like, we know we're fucking you over, but like, we're gonna be a little bit chill about it.
Something's wrong here.
He does significantly more damage, I feel like, than the
hard.
Previous mimics, because if he grabs you, like he'll just munch on you just till you're dead. Like I was waiting for for that kind of predetermined point where he's going to sort of toss me to the ground with a fraction of my health bar, but he just keeps munching and munching and munching, and then he's just like, he's not dead yet. I've got to keep going. Like so
plate club.
He's not done yet.
Clean plate mail club.
It felt less forgiving. Yeah. Exactly.
They are way harder in this game than they were previous.
Yeah.
I've died to mimics more in this game just fighting them.
Yeah.
Than I died to mimics being eaten by mimics any other game.
This is kind of spoilers, but they vary them up too. There's both the regular kind of mimics from Dark Souls 1, then there are the Exorcist mimics that crab walk on the back of their hands. Yeah. Yep.
Unfortunately, no third mimic. I was expecting like a cartwheeling mimic or something like that. There's just both both kinds of mimics, but they have tons of hit points. They hit really hard. That drop kick that they have has this crazy dead angle where like if you're blocking and facing it, it can still smack you in the back of the head.
Yep.
Or not the drop kick, the spin kick thing. They're kung fu mimics that they do. They're great. Like these guys.
I laugh so much when I'm fighting them. Their moves just look absolutely ridiculous.
This is again underlying one of the themes. This is a very funny game.
Well, just like the audacity to make your first chest, what could be the first chest that somebody finds, because this is a relatively kind of hidden area. Like if you're just kind of like, whoa, dragon, I'm not going to go there. But to make the one of the first chests available in the game a mimic is kind of just like it tells you something, because correct me if I'm wrong, the first mimic in Dark Souls 1 was Sens, yeah, it's where you got the lightning spear. Yeah. And then 2, like it wasn't until like Doors of Pharos. Well, I guess it depends because it's so non-linear. But
well, there are traps in 2, but none of them are as lethal as mimics are.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, this is very, and then Bloodborne, which we shall never speak of because they got rid of mimics entirely. Which, give me a break.
Yeah, Gary hates Bloodborne. Hashtag Gary hates Bloodborne.
Well, I hate anything that doesn't have mimics in it. I was talking about True Detective earlier, and I kept waiting for Woody Harrelson to open up his wallet and have it bite him.
Just unhinge his jaw.
It pissed me off. Oh, like a Woody Harrelson mimic? Like you think you paid for a meet and greet of the cast of Cheers, and Norm just enveloped you?
if anybody from Cheers is going to be a mimic, it's going to be Ted Danson with that forehead. Okay,
it's probably just going to open up. He's going to have a mouth above his eyebrows like a real Ghostbusters toy. But anywho, if you can fight this thing, or you can go get a Lloyd's Talisman / Undead Hunter Charm.
Undead Charm, yeah.
Yeah. You can actually just take the treasure from him, which is actually really great for this point in the game.
Oh, it's awesome.
It's a deep axe, which is a strength weapon, but deep is a new infusion in this game.
Yeah. It serves as kind of the same role as a cult.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how I read it. Yeah.
Yep. And getting that this early is really great.
If you Lloyd's Talisman or Undead Hunter Charm, one of these things, be sure you stick around for when it wears off, because they give a little yawn. It's amazing. They stretch really their arms up in a big Y.
And even if you want to kill them using a charm, you can use them in battle. So it'll make them go to sleep in the middle of a fight. You can also, if you make them go to sleep or hit them a bunch, when they're getting up, hit them with the charm. They have to go through all of those animations fully. They can't cancel out of anything. So if they're doing the yawn to go back to sleep, you can hit them during the entire time. It does not cancel their sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Once they go back to sleep, then they wake up. So the Undead Hunter Charms, like I ended up actually using them constantly just because they made mimic fighting easier.
Yes, and also because of so many mimics.
Yeah, man, there's so many mimics in this game. If you go the other way, the downward path, you fight that gauntlet of guys, and you're introduced to our first Red Eye Knight.
Yeah.
Our Lothric Knight. And these guys are tough.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to run. There's several of them. Unlike the Pus of Men, these are tough encounters that there are a lot of. They're not as bad as the spear ones, which are definitely the thing I had the hardest trouble with in this area, but the sword ones are still pretty rough. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a weapon stance or if it's a kind of a bespoke move for them, but they can really get around your kind of circle stepping with these wide attacks that are meant to dissuade you from getting behind them. And they do that.
So they have the shield. Yeah. The shield swipe. It felt like it was deliberately tweaked to to actually break off that kind of circle strafe, because I'd find myself just very naturally kind of going into that, trying to slide, circle strafe around for the backstab, and it would just come out like at this perfectly inconvenient angle to knock me out of that, and then you'd get guard broken or just lose a huge chunk of your stamina. So.
Yeah, a bunch of enemies and bosses do this.
Yeah,
the ones that have a shield have this like, hey, get out, stop getting behind me, move.
Yeah,
that is I like better than I like just the every attack does a 360. Which is like how I felt Bloodborne did it, where almost all of these attacks just hit no 360 arc for not any particular reason. It doesn't look like they do, but they do. In this, at least it felt natural. And if you favor their sword arm, they can't really hit you with it.
Right.
So if you want to fish for backstabs, you can still do it. You just have to be more mindful about it.
If you get behind this guy, you go into another tower here, and up on top of this is a new bonfire, the tower on the wall, which introduces us to a new NPC, not so much here in the world, but actually back at the shrine. This guy named Lenhard, Leonard the Ringfinger, who is associated with a faction that we're going to find later. But he's pushing the red eye orbs on you.
Yes, and we can talk about the beginning of his quest now because it makes sense. So he's down at the NPC. He says like, hey, you probably want to go invade and pillage. Here are some cracked red eye orbs, and this allows you to invade right in the area. They're giving that to you right away, which is cool, and you get 5, which is fairly generous.
Yes.
If you go and you invade and you kill somebody, you get an ember, and then you get a pale tongue. And if you go back and talk to the Ringfinger with a pale tongue in your inventory, he says, listen, I'm sure you want an uncracked red eye orb. Here's how you're going to get it. And he gives you a lift key.
Yep. So beneath this bonfire is a door that is locked. And behind this door is an elevator down to a chamber that is full of what could either be bodies of these Lothric knights or just their empty suits of armor. And we're going to see a bunch of them later. But the primary feature is this is a gigantic circular kind of jail cell that has just a straight up Dark Souls 1 Dark Wraith inside of it.
Yes. And we'll just talk for a second about, so I think these are bodies because it's supposed to be the Dark Wraith being a badass. This approach, he looks so cool.
He's facing away.
Yeah, and just surrounded by bodies. It's like, it's really anime-y, but in a way that's cool, if that makes sense.
Yeah, cool anime. Gary Butterfield says anime is cool.
Yeah, put it on the back of the box for all the animes.
Putting a Y on the end of the word anime and then trying to pronounce it is a trick in itself.
The little diaresis on there. Yeah.
He looks amazing, and in keeping with the theme of like enemies coming back but being 1,000 times harder, Dark Wraiths are much harder to fight now. They're way more aggressive. They have an expanded moveset. They do a lot more damage. So this is for really dedicated people who want to invade right in the first area and be a dick. Like, you have to really earn it to become a Dick Wraith this early on.
Yeah, but it's not as much of a level of earning it as Dark Souls 1, where you had to
had to like soul level break the game.
Where you had to sequence break it. But it's still like right here in the first area. And if you can decode the strange way that NPC quest lines, the majority of them work, you have access to that. And that is, of course, kind of offset by the number of factions that are meant to dissuade you from doing that.
And comparatively, this NPC quest line, at least up to this point, is pretty straightforward.
Oh, yeah.
We are going to see some Byzantine fucking shit later. But this, at least, he tells you to go invade. If you do and you succeed, then the next step is unlocked.
He's even back in the same place where you found him before, by the Lothric throne.
He didn't arbitrarily disappear.
This is the closest you're ever going to get to the quest log and the sort of blinking yellow arrow in the Soul series.
Yeah, but this is great because he has the Phantom Shield, and he has he'll grab you and try and absorb,
make out with you.
Yeah. And
it's
he has
a slightly
this
less sensual move this time.
He's got this like kick move on it, which I think is a weapon art from his sword.
Yeah, I have not picked up that sword before. Apparently, it's good.
Yeah,
but I've not used it. I have had their mask drop, which is because of the fidelity of this generation, is even grosser and creepier.
I love it.
Like, you look like a real like Crypt Keeper when you wear that mask. Like,
sorry, that laugh was all wrong.
There we go. Okay. But if you don't go into doing that, which I don't necessarily recommend at this level because it's very tough, but this is for later playthroughs where you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
We'll talk about PvP later in the season.
Yes.
Also
in this tower. Oh, no. Also in this tower, we have these assassin undead who are going to kind of take their cherry tap you from the dark with their with their throwing stars or throwing knives.
Yeah. And so we can kind of go further down here too. So these guys, it's kind of nice. They're compressing space. They're kind of taking the Berg and the lower Berg and kind of doing it all in one area. Which is good because they know they can do that because it's a later game in the series.
Yeah.
You go further down and there is a room explicitly from Demon Souls. The room in like 2-1 that has the fire barrels and the fat official.
Yep.
Is here with just a different hollow, but it's like the exact same layout and everything. It's the exact same trap.
Yep. And he throws his firebomb and it will destroy you.
Yeah.
He floods the chamber. It's great.
Yep. And on the other side of that, you get a mail breaker.
Yeah.
Here.
If you're deciding to do decks, and beyond that is an NPC who we can't speak to yet. It's behind a locked door, and we're going to get that key a little bit later.
Yes, great rat.
Yeah.
But we will talk about him later. And the Mailbreaker is not a good weapon. The Sorcerer starts with it, and it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
It has really, really good counter damage. So if you can do backstabs or parries, it's good. Otherwise, it is not good.
Yeah.
So let's head up. Instead, we go up and we go to the rooftop area here.
Yes, out the middle of the tower. Again, we're down one level from the very high wall that just appeared one day, and we're looking onto kind of this little platform that is taking us onto the rooftops. But before that, we have some hollows worshiping this dead wyvern. And it feels like they're bait almost by this point, because you're like, okay, well, I'm going to take them out. That's going to be fine. And instead we have an undead warrior coming up from the ladder, and we have an assassin who jumps up over the wall to attack you while you're getting this.
Yeah. And then further, there are more of these guys worshiping the tree hollows, one of which turns into this pus of man.
Yeah.
And they give you fire bombs right there. Like, they're trying to be kind of kind. The best way to take these things out is if you can kill them before they transform. Which is what I ended up doing. I did not fight them as pusses of man until a little bit later. They transformed, I would fight them, and then something happened and I got killed. And then I would come back and just like, okay, that's a high priority target. I need to kill that guy before he can Resident Evil himself.
I actually wanted to ask you guys a question about the guys that are climbing up the walls. I felt like there was this, like, you get this interesting sort of caste system, like where, like, on the high wall, like, you have some of these lavish kind of design elements. You see, have like tapestries in the walls and things, and then, but you know that there's an undead settlement below that is presumably kind of the lower caste of society, and so it felt like seeing. I was imagining those guys who are sort of climbing up over the walls and sort of scaling the walls. That I imagined it almost being like this sort of peasant revolt that they had. Like learned how to kind of ascend up and over the walls to like mount kind of uprisings, like to sort of come up to the higher sort of the higher station, like, you know, sort of area of this world. That it was, I don't know, I'm sure I was kind of, you know, reading more into it maybe than was there, but it had this really nice tone of like them sort of rising up from the undead settlement below to try to exact some kind of retribution on the kind of soldier class, like the more reputable kind of elite, like strata of this area.
They're definitely more opportunistic, and they don't fit in with who we know should be manning this, especially because we're going through barracks and mess halls and things like that. The fact that they're attacking you, I don't know what that says. And we never see them attacking any of the Lothric people, but they may just be, fighting against whatever system there is, and you're the only system there is.
Yeah. What do you want to rebel against? Well, who have you got?
Yeah.
Well, I got this assassin who's dead, and okay. I'll take them. I like that idea a lot. And we do tend to see them in the lower area. So if they lived here at any point, if they actually did fulfill a function rather than coming from the village from down below, like it's a lower function.
Yeah.
You know, so it is, they don't tend to be up in the higher areas, and they don't show up at all when we actually get to the boss area where there are churches and beauty. We don't get these scrubs at all. It's all knights and guys with crossbows.
Yeah.
So I can see it. But yeah, this pus of man, which is another pus of man fight. It feels like a mini boss, but again, you can kind of avoid it.
Yeah. There's a lizard here, the first normal sized crystal lizard we've seen.
And he has a really good chance. I don't know if he always does, but he has a very good chance of dropping a raw gem. And one of the cool like little touches that Dark Souls 3 does, I think this does the Ember kind of upgrade system, other than the weird doubling requirements and doubling drops things. Does it about as good as any game in the series does. And one of the ways they do that is giving you raw infusion right off the start.
Yeah.
Because that's the only time it's going to be useful.
Yep.
Like getting a raw gem here is actually super significant because if you're a caster, if you're going to play any class where your weapon's not going to scale with your stats, go ahead and raw that shit. And you're going to do significantly more damage. And it's going to be great.
Or just pick a throwaway weapon and, use that.
Yeah, and just go to town, and it's going to be very helpful. Whereas before, raw was kind of a joke infusion. Like, weirdly, almost everything you can infuse is worthwhile now. You can even, there's like a luck based infusion, and it's valid. Like there's a reason to have a luck based, a hollow infused is what it's called. But having a hollow infused weapon is useful.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy. Like bleed works, poison works, like everything is good.
Yeah.
Now, my second playthrough is really bleed heavy, and bleed is amazing
Oh yeah.
in this game.
More valid
really
more valid builds equals better then.
Yeah, and if they finally patch in actual like sorcery viability, as opposed to the weird half measure they did, like we're golden, you know.
Yeah.
Even after the patch, like my lightning spears do 96 damage or something like that. It's not worth it. But my bleed spell does, you know, bleeds people in one hit. So like bleed is still great. Yeah,
bleed's ridiculous.
On my faith dex build. We get this little view down here where we can look down onto this square that is just filled with bodies.
Yep.
This is an amazing set piece that we're going to talk about when we get a little closer to it.
We're going to get there.
It's wonderful.
Pretty quick, and we can get there right away. Like there's a path to a ladder we can take down to a balcony, but we can take this detour through these barracks for kind of like it's a pretty dense kind of coil of set pieces that we can get to. That kind of starts off with this open air viewing area that has a red eye knight in a decidedly more kind of cluttered environment, like you're in these tables and stuff like that.
It's worth going through here because you get a couple of really significant pieces of treasure, but guarding that is the first Lothric knight that uses a spear.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys had the same problem. I had a really tough time with these guys on my first time through. This probably killed me more. These guys killed me more than the boss did.
Jason, let us know. Like, did this guy give you trouble?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely found the range, you know, problematic. Because I was playing I have a ritual where my first playthrough is always, you know, just a big beefy dude with a giant sword. So like playing with that slow roll, and it was very easy to get skewered, or just find yourself unable to find that evasive out, like if you need to roll out the way of an attack. So yeah, I did find him. He was a bit of a pain.
Yeah.
Just a lot of stamina on these guys, and they have a really, really quick recovery for that. So if I could kick their shield out of the way, you know, which I had to do. First of all, I've always found spears hard to parry.
Oh yeah.
Just because of how they telegraph their move. Spears and halberds, I think, are very hard to parry. Yeah. But I kick their shield out of the way. They would be stunned for a second and then immediately counterattack, like in the middle of my chain of attacks. Like they have poise, and as we'll talk about at the end of the game, I don't, or at the end of the episode. So like once they did that, it was very easy for them to chain combo me in the middle of me chain comboing them.
Yeah.
You know? So I found this guy really, really tough. Like this ended up being, weirdly enough, in this first area, the hardest encounter for me.
Oh wow.
Like I had a harder time with him than the Ween.
Yeah. The blue-eyed nice kind of.
Yeah, the guy later.
Yeah. Wow.
Or the wing knight. Like the wing knight I did not have as much of a hard time with.
Yeah. Wow. I'm not trying to like pull rank or whatever you would call that. I just it didn't give me any more trouble than the other Red Eye Knight that we fought.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Something about my playstyle makes me weak to these guys and strong to other things.
Yeah.
But that's Souls.
Yep.
Tears for spears.
Yeah. Tears for spears. Everybody wants to rule world 1-1. Yeah. So
behind this Red Eye Spear Knight is I can't tell if it's a mess hall or if it is a like an armory almost. It's like this.
There's food. There's like a couple cook pots.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's another eating zone.
A bunch of hungry boys.
It's a Taco Bell Pizza Hut. So it's a wing stop for the wing nights.
Yep.
Yeah, they love going to Wingstop.
But yes, this is kind of like a big, tall, dark area, and there are two ways you can get at this. If you kind of notice this narrow walkway off to the right, you can go through some debris and get to a very early Astora straight sword.
Yeah, which is not as strong as it was in Dark Souls 1, which it wasn't great in Dark Souls 1. It's kind of a noob trap, but like it was still decent. It's good here though. If you have the faith for it, like this is a great weapon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it ceases to be a key to a whole new area. Like the Astora straight sword was one of the easiest ways to get through the catacombs unscathed.
Yeah, get a blessed weapon. Yeah. Even though you can, you'll be able to bless weapons earlier in this game than you could in previous games.
Yeah. There's also a Silver Eagle kite shield here, which has very high physical defense. Great.
Well, yeah, it has 100% physical, which most classes don't start with.
Right.
So it's really, really great to get this right off the bat. Mm-hmm. It's also something that I found out since I was fucking around with shield infusions is that it can be infused, whereas a lot of shields can't. Out of all the shields I have, most of the ones I would want to use cannot be infused. And infusing it lowers its physical defense, but there are 2 infusions that give you passive regen.
Oh, shit.
Blessed and Simple. Blessed regens your health. Simple regenerates your FP. So having even as a second shield, having a simple shield that will regen your FP is useful for when you're just running around and you don't need a physical block.
Wow, I had no idea you could bless shields.
Yeah.
Or not bless, but, infuse.
You just can't do it for very many, so it's easy to miss.
Yeah.
And there's a huge downside to doing it, but it is good for a backup weapon.
Yeah, or just a shield you keep on your back.
Yeah, exactly. If you're
exactly,
two-handing it. Yeah. If you're two-handing it either, and you don't want to use the Grass Crest shield, if you rather than having stamina regen, if you'd rather have a different kind of regen, that's an option.
That's awesome.
The way that when you get down here, there's a lot of these gigantic undead with axes and halberds and the like, and several dogs. This is a tough encounter, and you're encouraged to kind of pick people off from up on top with fire bombs and the like. But once you finally clear it out, you get an Estus shard, which is huge. Again, this is even though you don't have to go this way, it is a shortcut that's very good. And then you get a key that's really important to that cell that we mentioned back then with Grey Rat.
Yes, who is a thief who was imprisoned here, and he asks you to go on an errand for him. He wants you to deliver a blue tearstone ring to his friend / maybe a significant lady.
Just somebody who
someone he knows.
Yeah.
Loretta. He wants you to find her at the base of the high wall.
Yes. Here's a trash item. You throw it away. Here's a ring you'll never want to use.
Yeah.
It was an engagement ring.
Yeah. Well, that makes it sad. Like it's
for sale engagement ring never used. The second saddest story ever told.
Yeah.
But so like a lot of NPCs that you meet out in the world, I think this might be the first we've talked about. If you go talk to him, he will, if you say yes to him and say, yes, I'll accept this, he disappears and goes back to Firelink.
Yeah, he teleports back.
Yeah.
So we had to finally deal with that square. If you go down that long ladder, you get to this area with tons of these knight armors, dead knights, and then also most of them though are not dead knights; they're just hollow armors. If you smack them, they fall apart. So either the things inside are desiccated or disappeared somehow. There's also a big thick knight that it's explicitly a berserk reference that looks very similar to the God, I can't remember the name of him. The first big round knight that you fight in Berserk, or the
Guts fights.
Guts fights. Yeah.
The prove yourself kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And Guts is a note here, so people can soapstone, ruminate, could it be time for Guts and things like that.
Amazing.
There, which I really like.
Yeah. I love these, like the set piece. Anytime you see some of these armors, specifically the big guys, the wing knights here, because they are just pinioned with these spears.
Yeah,
they are just pin cushions for these things. It's great.
They had to be taken down by legions. And we get this circle where there's one remaining wing knight who has killed seemingly dozens and dozens, or tons of regular knights have died.
Yeah.
Here, either fighting the wing knight, which is the thing that I got.
Yeah.
From it, because they are in opposition, and this is confirmed later when we find out more about these guys. But it's pretty awesome. And he's just on patrol, and this guy, I like the design on this guy.
Oh yeah.
This is just this big fat guy.
Yeah. Apparently the tiny wings on the back of their armor are real life kind of things too, specifically like medieval Polish kind of things. Yeah, I need to look up the actual name of that order of knights, but that has a real life precedent.
Cool.
Yeah, and they worship something called these angels, which I don't know. Like, you've got a note here in the thing. I don't know if that's what they are, but we can talk about that later when we find out more about the angels. And that is a hearsay here, so that kind of explains a little bit about the war. And they are led by Gertrude, the winged daughter who is imprisoned in the Grand Archives. So we're going to learn a lot more about Gertrude.
Yep.
I don't think it's too spoilery to think that we're not done with Lothric.
Oh no.
We know that Lothric is one of the lords of Cinder, so we know we're coming back to lands controlled by Lothric, and that's where we're going to get into a lot of the story about these guys. And I really love that book ending.
Oh yeah,
this game does, where we're getting these little hints of what these things are, and then we play an entire game in between actually finding out what they are. And given my general stance that the stuff that the things that are new to Dark Souls 3 are the cooler things, as opposed to the stuff that is brought back from earlier games. I love that. If this game was actually about just Lothric, you know, and had just these little quotes of areas and stuff that were kind of cute, but without the more explicit callbacks we've had and we're going to get. I think this works really, really well for storytelling, because I had this in the back of my head the entire time. Like, who's Gertrude?
Yep.
You know,
where are these Grand Archives? Is this a sequel to the previous Grand Archives that I know of?
Yeah. Ooh, I'm going to go to something called the Grand Archives. Like, just having that, knowing that area name is fun. As a fight, these guys are really tough. They are like spin to win kind of guys.
Yeah.
Their weapon arts is this like dorky tornado thing that they do. But what they lack is that I'm going to hit behind me shield bash thing. So the reason why I found this guy easier to deal with than Spiritor is that like I could get behind him.
Yeah.
So, and his arena is really kind. It's just a big circle that you can easily run around. There are also several like kind of perches above, like little hidden areas on roofs and stuff you can get to that have treasure, but also make good, like you can kind of firebomb this guy and soften him up.
Yeah. I was going to say the game really, it entices you to cheese them. I feel like, because I think there's one bit of loot where you actually get like a cluster of like three or five firebombs, like in sort of one drop, you get a piece of loot. And it's right kind of at the ridge, like right as you're approaching this arena.
Yeah. Which is great because, you know, I think that so many people walk into these games with the assumption they have to sword and board it, or at least hide behind cover, that, you know, anything they can do to kind of like goad you into like, no, like be opportunistic, use some consumables, expend some resources.
Yeah. Range combat is always an option in this game, which I really like. Yeah, but eventually you kill him.
Yeah, and I forget what he drops. I didn't make a note of it.
His halberd, or this might be a random. He might not always drop it. But I picked up his halberd here and never ended up using it. But
beyond this charred charnel house of kind of this wing knight and his old boy moment is kind of this cathedral square. Right. You know, we've looked down on this from before, and we've seen, you know, this cathedral with the blue crest above it. And this is kind of like a terrace with these, you know, staircases being patrolled by these knights. And we have a couple of different options of kind of where we can go from this point. But let's head to the set piece and meet a new NPC.
Yes. Emma, High Priestess of Lothric Castle, of which there's very little to.
Yeah. She's a gatekeeper of sorts.
Yes. And she's disappointing. I found her disappointing. I kept expecting there to be more to her story than there is.
Yeah.
Well, these you know, level designers, they built a cathedral for this one person, this one NPC. It's like all of the work that went into that just for this one lady sitting in a chair, like, to me is almost just seems like the height of opulence and extravagance.
Yeah. I just wish she had more lines.
Yeah.
Like it's,
yeah,
you know,
it does play it up. It feels like she should be quite pivotal and important.
Yeah, she just doesn't tell you very much.
No.
She mentions again that the Lords of Cinder's lands are literally converging at the base of this castle, and says to go there. And she warns you about this dog, the vile watchdog of the Boreal Valley.
I love that. Just that phrase. I just want to like take the way that I feel when I hear the vile watchdog of the Boreal Valley and just bottle that.
It's the cellar door of Dark Souls 3.
Yep.
It's euphonious or whatever.
Yeah.
But also I love when you hear about something before you reach it. Like one of the things I talked about in the book is in You Died was that when we were having that chain of pain, like the journalists who were on this little email listserv that when we were playing through the game for review, like nobody ever complained about spoilers, because when you hear somebody mention, oh my God, there's this Hydra spitting water at me, and if you haven't gotten to that point in the game yet, it's, you know, you've heard some vague description of this threat that you haven't encountered yourself yet. So it bigs it up, and it actually makes it even more like nerve-wracking when you finally do encounter this thing. This is the thing that all of the villagers, this is like the monster in the woods that all the villagers keep kind of whispering about, and then you finally find it, and I felt like just the fact that they have Emma kind of mention the name of it seeds this kind of anticipation, you know, for the fact that you're that you're about to actually have that encounter, which is great.
You get kind of the best of both, which is you have you don't have enough context to really grasp the significance of what you just heard or what was spoiled for you, if you consider that a spoiler. And when you actually see the thing, you have just enough context to heighten the experience of it.
Yeah. It's really cool. Like I like that too. She does a couple of things. So she does that. She also gives you our first covenant, the Way of Blue, and gives you a key to the next area, the small Lothric banner. The Way of Blue, you can turn on and off covenants whenever you want. You etch them upon your heart. The Way of Blue works now. So if you are having a hard time in the game or you just don't like being invaded, put it on and you'll get some blue sentinels that come help you out when you get invaded. It's worked for me a bunch of times. Like, I don't use it a lot, but I've used it in a couple areas, and it is very helpful. You can also, and we're not going to go into what this actually happens. If you murder her, you will sequence break the game.
Yes.
So I've tried that. It is, it's interesting. So, and it is a way to access a very late game. If you can fight a very late game boss, you can access a very late game area very early.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And it is I had a lot of fun doing it. Just dashing for items, suicide run after suicide run, not fighting anything. It is a way to get a really huge kind of leg up on the game. I think I came back with that boss and leveled up something like 13 times.
Jesus.
It is ridiculous. But I just wanted to see if I could do it more than anything. I'm starting to play through not doing that because what it does is it cheats you out of legitimately fighting that boss.
Yeah.
Because there is a cheesy way to do it.
That's a great boss too.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing she gives you is that banner.
Best boss on the mug, just on world's greatest boss.
Yep. Oh man, I want to Photoshop that. The other thing she gives you, we mentioned this, but I want to go into just a brief bit of detail about this. She gives you that banner that you can wave to get to the bottom of the settlement, and I love the insignia on that. If you go and look at the item image, it is a circle like a dark sign, except not all of it is on fire. Just one small piece of it, like 10% of it is. So it's like, to me that reads like a little bit like the Ember from Dark Souls 2. Like, is this thing just barely being relit, or is it just barely staying lit?
Yeah.
Yep.
I
Pretty good. It is wonderful design.
Yeah. So they're just between here and the boss arena, there are knights.
Yes.
And we're not going to spend too much time talking about these guys. We've fought them before. It's a tough encounter. And you can go up kind of this little side path to unlock that one-way shortcut we mentioned from the right. A little elevator that will be your boss run for here.
Yeah.
When you actually go down to the bottom and you go in through the boss fog, it is in a big empty room, and the other end of it is a door that is kind of grown over with vines. It is either being corrupted somehow with this treeness that is happening, or it just has not been opened in so long.
Yeah.
That there are these dead vines.
And it is like bent in as though something from the outside has tried to bash it in from the center. Yeah.
Yes. And when you start to open it, we actually get our boss fight.
Yes, Vort of the Boreal Valley.
There's so many dogs in this stage. It almost feels like there's just all of these like panting, leaping like bits of foreshadowing or something. That's
it's the Lords of Dogtown.
Yeah, these are. Yeah, I thought that was a disappointing follow-up to Dogtown Souls. And also just to get out of the way, I wish I had made this joke and then found out 1,000 people already made it, so I feel bad. But my son is also named Vort. But it's everywhere. It's like we all came with the same joke all at the same time.
I didn't. That's delightful. That's the first time I heard it.
Thanks. I went to go tweet it, and then I thought, wait a minute. And then I searched it, and tons of people said it already. So
you didn't walk face first into that trap.
I very nearly did, but it just goes to show you, like, I mean, people steal jokes all the time. Like, that's actually a thing. Like, fuck that fat Jew guy. But like, and that's a proper noun. That's not just being anti-Semitic.
That is his chosen name.
That's his handle. But like, that does happen. But also, it's very easy just to come up with the same joke as other people. But so this is Vort, and this is a nice mix of like a person beast fight, I think. It feels like it answered my questions because he has kind of my concerns about Bloodborne bosses, where he has kind of a beast-like moveset, but there's no 1,000 bits of flayed skin to get in my camera. Like you can always see where this guy's at.
Yeah. So to describe him a little bit, he's a gigantic dude. If he was standing upright, this would be just like, oh, it's another big armored guy fight. However, he primarily moves around on all fours, and he's carrying this big kind of mace that does frost damage to you.
Yes, and frost damage is new to the series. It is tied to a status effect, Frostbitten, which hurts and slows stamina recovery significantly.
Yeah.
So it's very similar to Bleed. Bleed actually, or like a certain, because Bleed keeps changing.
Yeah.
Bleed now does a big chunk of damage to you. It used to slow down your recovery. Now Frostbite does that.
Yeah.
To me, it almost felt like fighting the boss form of a basilisk or something like that, where there's this kind of cloud that you're always aware of your proximity to this like cloud of threat. You know, that's building up this bar that you always have an eye on. That it added a nice layer of intensity and threat to the encounter that wasn't just, okay, is his giant mace like hitting me in the skull, yes or no, kind of follow the flow chart. Like, you know, it was a third factor that made the fight feel more unique to me.
If XY mace equals skull, then dead.
Yeah.
then it just stops. There's just nothing after it.
It's a really great boss, I think.
Oh yeah.
I think he's got 2 phases, but it doesn't feel excessive. Like he gets more aggressive and his moves change a little bit, but it has a little bit of that Maria thing where the first phase feels like it trains you for the second, which is the way to do.
It toggles back and forth as well, doesn't it? Like it's not like a Mario kind of 3-stage fight, like.
Yeah.
Because he goes into that very hyper aggressive mode, but then he will revert back to
he can chill out
previous ones. So
he does it. He also does something.
Stay frosty, Gary. Stay frosty.
I will. I always will. Okay. That is the Crypt Keeper laugh. Crypt Keeper's joining us for this last little bit of podcast boils and ghouls. One of the things he does that no Souls boss does is when he starts doing his breath weapon or his fog attack, if he gets hit during it, he stops doing it.
Yep.
Which Souls enemies never do that. They're just like, I gotta listen. Like once I start breathing, I'm not gonna stop. Like I gotta get all the poison out. But he actually will stop, which I appreciate.
Well, if you're not gonna have poise, then he should.
Well,
then he shouldn't either.
I prefer everyone have poise. I'm a communist as far as the poise goes. Vote Sanders Poise 2016. But he has I love his like leap attack that goes kind of corner wise. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like he shunts towards you and then he kind of side shunts.
Yeah.
At an angle that's really interesting. It's a really excellent fight though.
Yeah.
And he's really, really fun to, after I beat him, the thing I was doing on my second playthrough is like, I'm going to help everybody else with this fight after I do it.
Oh yeah.
So like co-oping against this guy is super fun too. Like it is, this is a really, really, really great first proper boss fight.
Yeah.
In the game.
So yeah, I loved when he goes into his sort of hyper dash back and forth kind of mode. I loved that all of a sudden, like the fight wasn't about just stick and dodge. It was all of a sudden about just it became much more like run and leap, like to evade. So even the way that the fight is choreographed, like there are sections where you're kind of moving in and angling for the hit, and then there's times where you're just running around kind of diving wildly. So even in terms of that, it just added such a sense of I'm doing different things in this fight. I'm not just repeating the same like narrow recipe of responses. It just felt so varied. Yeah.
It is. I got very close to acing this guy and then did not. But I was very close. My first playthrough, I got very lucky and was doing well, and then he got me, and then after that, my confidence was shaken.
Yeah.
It took me a couple tries, but it is not unfair and is well balanced, and he telegraphs his moves well. The only thing I'd say that like kind of frustrates me is there is a move he does in his second phase if like I'm under him that he hits me, but there's nothing that I can see that is hitting me. Like he will do a thing and it doesn't look like it's not an AoE of ice magic.
Like sitting or something.
He doesn't sit or anything. He swings his weapon somehow, and it still somehow hits me. And I don't exactly know how it's happening. So if I had like a third-person camera, like a Resident Evil camera on the fight, I'm sure I could figure out what it was. But that's like the only time it felt kind of shitty. Yeah. But for the most part, it is really, really great. And this guy's actually really interesting because we were talking about that, giving you a heads up about stuff that's coming later. Looking at his soul and the boss weapons we can make eventually. We don't have the ability to make boss weapons yet. Yes. But learning about this guy gives us that little bit of like tantalizing lore features.
Yes. So looking at his soul, he's an outrider knight. And he's never far from the fleeting dancer, which is a clue for later. But you can make two items with this. The Pontiff's left eye ring, which kind of like points to this character named Pontiff Sullivan, who gives this to his knights to put them into a frenzy and turn them into beast-like creatures. And he only gives it to people who are going to far-off lands.
It's knights who peer into the black orb are lured into battles of death. Like, that is so good. Like, that is so fucking metal. Like,
that's so metal. That's exactly right.
Yeah, it is really, really excellent levels of metal in this stuff. And I was just like reading this again, just that tantalizing, like, ooh, who's the Pontiff? Like, this, I mean, even if his name is Sullivan, which is stupid.
Well, it's spelled different. Like he's got the goofy white person name spelling of Sullivan.
Yeah, it's the Pontiff Skylar.
The Counting Crows.
Finally, Archdrake Dakota is going to fight us. And then you can also make his hammer, which gives you access to that status effect.
Yes,
that frostbite.
And that ring, like it's not as pronounced as Bloodborne, but it gives you ability to get like a regain system that's based not on damage but on combo strikes. Yeah,
kinda. It takes a lot of combos to work.
Yeah.
So it's pretty weak, but it does make things a little bit Bloodborne-y.
Yep.
So he dies. He forms a bonfire. And then, Kole, just in the interest of not 100% rushing through things, do you want to do the opening to the next area? Like do the stuff with the gargoyles on the next episode?
Yeah, sure.
Is that okay? Because that makes sense. It's how we get into the next area.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of...
So we open the gate to a new world.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what we're going to call it for this episode. We're going to talk about how we get into the undead settlement in the next episode. As per last time, guest to be announced. So lining up guests this time has been a little bit more back and forthy. And we still have great people who are coming, and but it is getting things nailed down. I hate to announce something and have it not go through.
Oh, yeah.
So for now, that's going to be the episode. Jason, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Again, really appreciate it.
Oh, man. I always enjoy it. It's such a huge pleasure.
Where can people find you online?
So I'm on Twitter at Riot Whiskey, and that's one word, RIOTWHISKI. And the book's website is u-died.com.
Yeah.
So
can't recommend it enough.
Thanks. I hope people get to check it out. And just because a lot of people have asked, even though it is being published in the UK, our distributor ships internationally. So if you're in the US, it's a tenner in the UK, but if you ship internationally, it ends up being about $22 after shipping, which for 333 pages of Souls goodness, I feel like is pretty good value.
Yeah,
and a lot of love was put into it. So
yeah, I'm
super...
super...
And there's a Kindle version as well. There's no physical version on Amazon, but you can get the Kindle version if you want to just save a little bit of money and not have to deal with the shipping expense. So and there's sample chapters you can get through iBooks or Amazon through the Kindle store. So if you want to check out a little bit before you commit to it, then yeah.
And it's recommended. It's really great. And as much I would say that even if we weren't in it and we weren't friends, so I really do like it. If you like us, if you like this show, and we teased about complaining about poise, I think that's more or less just poise is turned off. You can Google search that. There'll be a link in the show notes. It is fucking gobsmacking to me that a major mechanic of this game is just literally set to 0. And it is incredible that the game we played will not exist for our, for people in the future. I was just going to say our children, for when me and Kole and Jason
and our children.
Yes. It's like Shrine of Amana turned to 11. Like, there will not be this version of Dark Souls 3 in the future. And that's bonkers. Because the whole time we played through, when I was like, man, Dark Souls 3 is the hardest one in the series. Like, I was playing, that was me getting stun locked by everything. So I feel like I'll have to revise that. I'm looking forward to doing a playthrough once they finally turn it back on.
Me too. And I'm very gun shy about starting one without that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm doing it anyway, but because it does have that build variety, that means I'm going to keep replaying it. But like, and this isn't a call out thing. I'm just really, it's an amazing thing to leave out because for a little while, I think people were theorizing that it was intentional, but so many different mechanics rely on it. Like, why would you have all these weapon arts that increase poise? Why would you have things like that? Like, items that increase poise. Poise has to exist, and it just turned off, and it just means that like PvP is less fun for me now. I can stun lock people, but if I had the hardest PvP encounter I had was with a guy with a certain spear, and I just couldn't get within his reach without getting stun locked. And then I'd roll away, and it just kept happening, and like.
I just imagine you having a dream about like a spear just lying on the floor and like just waking up like crying, bawling, like just. So many bad experiences with this particular weapon.
Whenever I dream about spears, it always symbolizes something bad.
It's Freudian, I'm sure.
Yeah, so there'll be a link in the show notes with more detail, but just rest assured that we're aware of it, and we also wish that it was fixed.
Yes.
If you like this show, what can they do, Cole?
Well, Gary, they can leave a rating or review in iTunes. We have maintained a very high rank in the iTunes video games and games and hobbies. We haven't recorded since we hit that top, but just super grateful for that. And that is it's kind of crazy. Also gobsmacking that we have remained up there, and all of that goes to help, and we've seen that demonstrated over and over again. So if you are somebody who uses iTunes, subscribing, rating, and reviewing there goes and does a great deal to help spread the word, which feeds into our Patreon, which has ballooned as well since we last spoke. We have added a new show, Monster in My Podcast, which is great fun. It is a new D&D monster 3 times a week, and we're only able to do that because of the people who have come out and given a couple of bucks a month.
Yeah, we really do appreciate it.
Yes.
You can, if you are unable to do a standing donation, if you head over to Duckfeed.tv/store, you can support us by purchasing things, premium episodes of our other shows, and then most new and notably, my book, Souls of Darkness, is available there. If you would like to get a physical copy, you can also go to powerworlds.com to go to the period website that is about this series of books that I hope to populate with other books in the future. But I would love it if you picked up a copy. As we previously mentioned, international shipping is the worst, and I apologize for how expensive it is to get one of these internationally. But it is small press, so it is expensive. But you can get that there. You can also, if you can't do any of those things, and you can't rate or review or do Patreon or buy anything, I understand that too. Tweeting, blogging, just mentioning the show is very helpful. If you know somebody who would like it, tell them. If you're on one of those message boards where people are like, hey, I like Souls, what should I do to get into it? Point them towards one of our early episodes that kind of explain the basics, because those are a good resource, and we'd love to have more people join us.
Yeah. I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you again, Jason.
Yes, we really appreciate it, Jason.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And until next time, Cole, what should they do?
They should beware, because the vile watchdog keeps a close eye on things.
Ooh, I like it. Umbasa.
Umbasa.
Mufasa, say it again.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon.
Hey, you're here after the old post roll, and this is me letting you know about a giveaway. So we had Jason on to talk about the You Died book and about this area, and we wanted to reward our most loyal listeners, by which I mean people who listen to the very, very end, with a chance to win a free copy of this book. So we have a Facebook page that we mentioned. It is facebook.com/bonfireside chat. On the day that this episode comes out, I'm going to put up a post to the public that says the world could use more love letters. Okay. And if you want to be put into the running for this, just respond with the phrase, "Give me more." So you're going to see the world could use more love letters, and respond with the phrase, "Give me more." The deadline for this is by the end of the day on Saturday, May the 14th. So after this episode had been out for a week, and we're going to choose from that, and we're going to send as many copies. I don't know how many copies I'm going to get to send out. You just have to take it on faith. Thank you so much for listening to the end. This is our way of rewarding you and spreading the word about this book. So once again, facebook.com/bonfireside chat. The prompt, the post you're looking for, says the world could use more love letters, and the response you're going to give is "Give me more." And as an addendum, I'm very sorry to say we would like to keep this in the United States if at all possible, just because shipping internationally a bunch of these would possibly bankrupt us. So I apologize to any of our international listeners, but that is just kind of a fact of life. Sorry. Thanks.